Hello, my dears. Welcome back. New background for today. I have been getting ready to stream this summer. I'm really excited because I've really missed streaming. So that's going to happen. I'll put some links down below. So believe me when I say that part of me cringes at even making this video. Apparently there are still people, 2021, who think that cancel culture doesn't exist. People I know and love. I'm like, do we live on the same planet? So I kind of organized my thoughts, and today I want to talk about 5 big problems that I have with cancel culture from a more feminist, humanist perspective. The New York Times defines cancellation as an attack on someone's employment and reputation by a determined collective of critics. Now, I like this definition for 2 reasons. One is that economics, cash money, is central to the cancellation phenomenon. Canceling is an attempt to minimize someone's power and influence in society. Second, I like the determined collective of critics. Oh boy, let's just call it what it is, okay? A frothy social media mob. Let me start with where I think most people across the cancel culture spectrum would agree. I think most good folks would agree that there should be consequences when someone makes a serious moral error. Hate crimes, sex abuse, vile abuses of power, not that complicated. Criminals should be charged, people who abuse their power shouldn't be able to. I also think most reasonable folks would agree that there is a certain type of person now who likes to cry, OMG cancel culture, every time they're criticized. Like this dude who blamed cancel culture when his horse failed a doping test.
Pretty harsh. It was like a cancel culture kind of a thing, so they're reviewing it.
Hey guy, I don't think cancel culture made you drug your horse. Lastly, I think most reasonable people would agree that nobody is entitled to praise or being liked or having followers or whatever. Being criticized, losing friends, losing fans, yeah, it sucks, but nobody owes you anything. Hopefully that makes it pretty clear what I'm specifically talking about here. Let's get on to my 5 big problems. The first is that in most cases, cancel culture does not offer proportional consequences. It targets every person, every context, every situation with the exact same punishment. That means that a lot of the time it ends up being overly punitive and it leaves no room for people to learn and grow. I mean, are we talking about a sexual abuser? Well, yeah, they should be canceled. They should lose their job, they should go to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. But what about a data analyst who tweets a Princeton study that found that riots decrease support for Democrats? Should he have lost his job for tweeting that? Because he did. Okay, what about an immigrant baker whose daughter tweeted something racist 9 years ago? Should he then lose his lease and all of his distributor contracts? Because he did. And all 50 plus of his employees, people of color and immigrants, all lost their livelihood. What about a high schooler who says the N-word with an A on Snapchat while bragging about getting her driver's license? Should she be barred from getting a college education? Because she was. What about an employee of San Diego Electric, a Mexican-American, no less, who had his hand hanging out the window in a suspicious way? Should people take a picture of that, post it on Twitter, and demand he be fired? Because they did, and he was fired. What about a pharmacy PhD student who's tweeting her thoughts and ideas about sexuality on her personal social media? Should she be put under investigation and face expulsion from her university? Because she is.
Initially, it was just, to my knowledge, an Instagram post that had sort of set things off. I asked them, okay, well, where in the policy does it say I violated any of the rules? No response to those questions. Had another meeting, and then they said they wanted to dismiss me from the program.
Unfortunately, there are thousands of situations like this popping up all over the country right now. We can see an uptick in lawsuits. Watchdog nonprofits are sounding the alarm, pretending that this isn't happening or that all of these people must have deserved it. To me, that seems a bit like an ostrich putting their head in the sand at this point. And look, I get it. The people in these cancellation scenarios aren't always the most sympathetic victims. It's not fun to defend someone who's made a mistake, maybe especially vile mistakes. But the alternative and what's happening now is that we don't, make room to address different situations fairly and proportionally. We end up treating this guy, this immigrant baker, the same as we treat serious criminals. And that's an injustice too. Not to mention, by the way, most people don't think about these average Joe targets of an outrage cycle ever again. They don't see the effects months or years after the mob has moved on. But it's real. It's funny. A lot of, these folks defending it want to talk about mental health on social media. Like, hello. The root of this problem, I think, is that cancel culture is really about black and white thinking. It's about seeing people as all good or all bad, when everybody, in reality, all of us, even these cancelers, right? They are capable of both. We all are capable of both. I'm gonna let Obama take the wheel on this one.
This idea of purity and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. There is this sense sometimes of the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people. And that's enough. I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself.
My second bone to pick is that cancel culture ends up targeting people with no real power in society. The canceling phenomenon has been on the internet for as long as I can remember. It was very popular on Tumblr, but it really went mainstream, I think, with Me Too. That is when a lot of people got together to use the internet to really take down some dangerous and terrible people. I mean, Harvey Weinstein being kind of the pinnacle of that, right? But we are now 8 years post Me Too. And in that time, I think that this phenomenon has really spiraled out of control. Maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 of the internet cancellations that I observe do not target actually dangerous and powerful people. It targets regular people for relatively minor mistakes or even just a questionable opinion. And when I say regular people, I mean people with no real money in the bank, no connections, no upward mobility in society. Something that I don't think most people who defend cancel culture understand is that the majority of cancellations do not make national headlines. They don't even make local headlines, which means they are largely unseen by the public. And maybe that's the problem. The invisibility of these average Joe cancellations, allows people to defend it because they only see these more extreme scenarios, or to pretend like it doesn't exist.
Here are some people who have supposedly been canceled. Kanye West, not canceled. That nigga is doing Sunday service every Sunday. Chris Brown, not canceled. I could leave this building right now and Chris Brown will be dancing in front of it. Dave Chappelle, definitely not canceled.
Notice how he's only talking about A-listers. My problem with that is he's right. Super powerful people don't suffer from cancel culture. Now that doesn't mean that therefore cancel culture doesn't exist. It just means that cancel culture affects people more severely the less power they have. I mean, you want to go there, war criminals, billionaires who exploit their workers, bank and pharmaceutical and insurance tycoons. These people don't have a Twitter and most of us don't know them by name. They can't be touched and they certainly can't be canceled. That alone makes cancel culture a questionable method for achieving justice. All right, number 3, I don't hear this one super often, but I think it's really important. Cancel culture is pro-surveillance and anti-worker. Let's think about how cancel culture redistributes power. On the upside, there is power in using our voices to collectively call out injustices and exploitation on social media. But the punitive method of cancel culture also invites corporations and employers, universities, big tech, landlords, these big powerful entities to monitor our personal social media and our political beliefs, if we want to talk about them. In the United States, a company can fire people for pretty much any reason beside their race, sex, sexual orientation, things like that. I mean, cancel culture practically begs for corporate surveillance because that's precisely why it works, especially on workers that don't have a lot of leverage. To me, that's making a deal with the devil. My fourth problem is that cancel culture centers activism that feels good over activism that does good. I think on some level, even the most rabid cancel culture supporters know that this is not always right. They know it goes too far sometimes. So what if it goes too far a lot of the time? Most of the time? Half the time? How many unjust cases are acceptable? Unfortunately, I think this stuff is mostly about feelings. It makes us feel powerful to make martyrs of people whose lives we can destroy. We turn them into symbols of bigger injustices, and in making an example out of them, we tell ourselves that injustice is being defeated. But in reality, nothing's really changed. In the world we live in, justice is rare and it's hard won and it's very incremental. But cancel culture offers justice that is immediate and easy and happens every day. Just go on Twitter. When injustice is baked into the system, people get frustrated and it feels good to let someone have it. And that I do get. Most of us have done it. We're just human. And for people who care about injustice, when you see these things happen all the time, you see the same type of people never held accountable, always getting away with it, you get tired. You get cynical. When people get too cynical, it becomes very easy to justify or overlook a lot of nasty behavior because it's a means to an end. Number 5, my last critique I'll share here is that cancel culture creates an environment where anxiety and self-censorship fester. I think part of what makes people roll their eyes about critiques of cancel culture is that it often comes from pretty famous people who don't have that much to lose. And from one perspective, it looks like they're complaining. From another perspective, it looks like they're standing up for people who don't have that level of media attention. I see it the second way. It's not that surprising that people who work in industries where asking questions and pushing limits are the ones that are talking about this the most. Writers and journalists, educators and researchers, artists, entertainers, comedians. The prospect of losing your livelihood for a minor slip-up is real, and it's scary, and it's certainly enough to keep people quiet. When the environment starts to feel, so tense that people can't speak honestly and candidly, when they aren't able to make mistakes and to learn and grow, and they feel like they're walking on eggshells and can't ask reasonable questions, those are all red flags. It looks like an abusive relationship to me. I recently interviewed Ariel Scarcella on my podcast, and she was telling me about and sent me receipts of messages that she gets every day from LGBT YouTubers who kind of are living their life in fear, afraid of making a mistake. Unfortunately, I worry that this is not improving, that it's actually getting worse for the next generation of YouTubers, and I feel for them. I really think everyone needs to take a deep breath and reflect on the culture that we're creating. Ask ourselves how much justice is really coming out of this. And at the very least, because this is apparently still controversial, we need to acknowledge that something's happening here and make an honest attempt to understand it. Okay, that was a nice vent. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your eyes and your ears, my dears. I hope you'll join me on stream where hopefully we'll not be chatting about depressing shit like people's lives being ruined. But if I don't see you there, I'll see you next time.